Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome back to Azure Community Live. This is episode 21. We've been away for a while due to all the things happening in the world. We took a bit longer summer break, and well, with all the three of the hosts have been very busy with all kinds of stuff next to doing community events. So I bought a new house, had to arrange a lot of stuff for that. So apologies for that. One of the other hosts suffered COVID, so that's also, we wish him well, and hopefully he will recover, and so Esteban can do some shows in the future again as well. And and Lars in Australia has also been very busy with other stuff. So today it's our rebirth, so we're starting again. Very pleased to have Sammy on the show. Sammy is from Belgium. I think we met 2 years ago on a conference you actually organized, the Data Mines.
Data Mines Connect was one of the co-organizers at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I think at that talk I was talking about the bot framework. So it's the roles have changed. Today you're going to talk about bot framework, and especially bot framework composer. So let's quickly introduce Sammy. He's a Microsoft MVP from Belgium, also one of the hosts of AI Talks and member of the global AI community. He's a senior consultant working in the Azure space, focusing on AI a lot. So I'm really curious to learn from him about Azure Bot Framework Composer. So Sammy, take it away.
All right, let me open my slides. So, Microsoft, and I'm partner at Arinti, technical partner, or you could even call it CTO. So a chatbot on itself. We'll just do a little introduction and then we'll go immediately into hands-on. Now, chatbots are quite different than other apps. And the main difference is that, well, the input. You might see here on this picture, if we only think about the words a bike or a bicycle, it could mean so many different things. It could be a bicycle where you can be sitting with two behind each other, or a bike with 3 wheels for kids, or a bike with only even 1 wheel. So again, input as text, and it's not always understandable by a computer what exactly is what is meant. Now, another different thing compared with apps is, of course, your input, your user experience. You only have your chat box where you can send in text, or you work with voice and where you actually don't see anything, but you're just talking and hearing what the voice button is saying. It's nothing new. The first chatbots were built in the 60s. Many of you might have heard of the chatbot Eliza, which was built to actually copy a psychiatrist and actually worked quite well. But the NLP, natural language processing, that was used for Eliza is actually the basic of what we're using these days. Now, to build chatbots, Microsoft has a couple of tools that we really can make use of and are very handy. And one of them is the QnA Maker. Now, I'll just go to what is a QnA Maker? Well, as it says, Q&A, question and answer. It's a tool where users can fill in an easy way questions and link answers to it. It has a service where you can automatically extract, for example, from a Word document or an FAQ page on your website. Another thing that is quite handy and is added, I think it was last year, is a multi-turn conversation, which means that when you ask a question, for example, where can I find the school, that you might ask extra questions to get to the correct answer. So where can I find the school? And then the bot can ask you another question. Okay, but what kind of school are you looking for? Are you looking for a nursery? Are you looking for a sports school? Are you looking for a university? And depending on that answer, will link you to the correct answer. Now, of course, active learning is something very interesting, which means that when the same question is asked multiple times and the QnA Maker service doesn't know it, it will add it and log it, so you can add the answer to it. Another part of active learning also is that when you as a user ask a question to it, it will give you, for example, two questions that are very close to each other in a prediction rate. So what it will do, it will show you the both questions, or it will return the two questions and will ask which one are you actually want to ask. Based on your input again, the QnA Maker service is getting extra trained. Of course, scaling is very important. If you build a chatbot for 10 users, or you're building a chatbot for 100,000 users or 1 million users, QnA Maker service is built on Azure Search in combination with an app service plan. So both of them are very scalable, and you can go from a free subscription to thousands of euros per month, up to what you decide. It supports more than 50 languages. Geert and I, we both speak Dutch, and Dutch is included, so we're very happy about that. A second tool that we for sure need to use to make our bot a bit smarter is LUIS. LUIS is an NLP tool of Microsoft, a language understanding tool. Now, what is language understanding? Let's take into the sentence, I want to book a flight. Now, out of that sentence, you would want to know what you need to do as a bot. And in this case, it's book a flight. Now, the user could ask you more information. Like, for example, I want to book a flight to JFK. Sadly, something we're not going to do at the moment with everything that is going on, but let's still take this to an example. Now, we still know that we want to book a flight, but we got some extra information, and that's JFK. It's an entity. We can make it even harder, and we still have our intent, book a flight, and we have our entities that can have different roles, where we have a from airport and a to airport. Or we can even make it much harder, and we can even add multiple entities to it. So we can also add when we want to fly. This is what LUIS does. It will recognize those elements within the sentence that you are sending to it. Now, why is this very important? Imagine you have a chatbot for booking a flight, and you just say, I want to book a flight to JFK tomorrow. And the first thing your chatbot is asking, oh, and where do you want to go to? Well, that makes your chatbot look quite stupid. And that's not something people like. It would be the same if you would go to a bakery, I want a brown bread, and they ask, oh, what bread do you want? You already told, so you don't want to repeat yourself. So it makes your chatbot more human. Now, of course, we have extra tools like for voice enabling to speech to text to speech, where we now have the neural voice, which actually is really good. I would advise you to look on the website of Microsoft and search for neural voice. The quality of what is created of text to speech. The other time I had made a video and I used one of the voices. And the person really actually called me, is like, who did you use voice? Well, and then I said it was just generated by AI, and he was like, wow, that's really good. Now, straight to the bots now. Microsoft started with Bot Framework SDK already a couple of years ago, which actually is a software development kit where you need to code everything. Just pick out some couple of things, a comprehensive experience, because you can do a lot of different things. It's easily buildable and build sophisticated conversations. You can build in your favorite programming languages, simple text or complex rich cards depending on what you want to do. And of course, natural language interaction is possible through LUIS. Now, as I said, it's built already a couple of years ago in 2016. It has more than 2,000 commits, over 125 releases, and you can build chatbots with Bot Framework SDK and multiple programming languages like C#, JavaScript, Python, and so on. The cool thing about Microsoft Bot Framework, and that brings over to any other service that I will talk about later on, it's that it can connect to multiple channels at the same time. So once you've developed a chatbot with Microsoft Bot Framework, well, then you can publish it in Microsoft Teams, and at the same time publish it on Facebook, on Telegram. Alexa is now also in general available, so that's also really cool. WhatsApp is also coming, so all these things are very handy, and you don't really need to change your code within. Of course, depending from platform to platform, certain things might be possible and certain things will not be possible. But if you would just say purely text-wise, well, then you can just move from one to the other without any issues.
Is WhatsApp already available? I saw it being announced on Ignite, but I haven't read anything.
It was already available via Twilio, but now, wait, there was a link. Let me quickly check, because there's a new Infobip. The company is called Infobip, and through them, you need to work through a third party to get access to WhatsApp. So with Infobip or Twilio, you can get access to WhatsApp. Of course, there's still a pricing linked in between that. It's not for free, not just like you're using Facebook.
No, of course, but I think especially here in the Netherlands, and I don't know how it's in Belgium, it's one of the most used platforms for bots. So it would be, I think it lacked for a couple of years. So it's really good to have it now.
Yeah, true. Even what many of our customers ask, and is it available on WhatsApp? Because everyone is on WhatsApp these days. What we're still missing is, for example, FaceTime messaging. That would be cool also, but I don't think Apple will be so open to allow that. So as I said, Bot Framework SDK, it's coding. Small image of how this looks like. What we do here, we have two functions, two tasks. The first one is welcoming the user, and the second is just echoing back what you said to the bot. Very simple bot. We'll build this exactly like this one also later on. So then is to build. Now, Power Virtual Agent got announced, when was it? I think last year, November. I was like, huh? This is new. But it looks nice. It's actually you could say that it's a way to build chatbots, but really for the business. It's a 1, 2, 3. It's giving power back to the business. You still have the natural conversations way, so to interact, to get specific items out of your text, and you can take actions by calling Azure Flow tasks, which both of them, all of this is done very simple, and that makes it very appropriate for business. And it has some monitoring, so you can nicely keep track of what is going on with your chatbot. If you want to have a little view of how it looks. So you still have a flow that you're building of items, of messages that you're sending. You also keep track of entities. You have a place where you can test your bot and so on. A third way of building chatbots is the health bots, which is something totally different. This is really a chatbot platform for the healthcare industry with highly secured interactions. There's some templates for example, for COVID-19 triage. We were happy to be picked by Microsoft here in Belgium to implement the COVID-19 chatbots for the hospitals here. And we were able to install it in 7 different hospitals here. And well, one of the hospitals, it's in Limburg here in Belgium, they even consumed, what was it they had? 800,000 messages per week or something. It was a lot because of what they're all using it for. They were linked to the top of Europe of the amount of messages sent through the HealthBot service.
What channel does it use then?
This one, it's you can choose by default. It's a web chat, but you can also integrate it on Facebook, on Teams, and so on. But by default, it's web chat, but you can ask for extra channels.
Okay, and what did the hospital use? Did they also use web chat?
They used web chat. So if you went to their website, you had a pop-up where you could the chatbot was taking the lead in those conversations, and it was asking you specific questions to get to the point of, okay, you need to be tested, or you need to go, it's okay, you're just having a cold, or just stay 5 days at home, all those kinds of things. But in the backend, we're keeping track of all the answers that was given. We asked also in which zip code they were living, so we could give an overview to the hospital in which areas there were more infections or where there could be more problems. And based on that, they could also, well, change some things in their hospital and get ready for it. The hospital I was talking about that was using a lot of messages per day, well, they were doing a totally different case. They used the HealthBot service to actually send every patient that was still coming in every day. They had to go through a questionnaire. So they got a text message on their phone with a link to the personal link to the chatbot, where they could answer certain questions. That went back to the hospital and was added into their in their paperwork. And based on their answers, they got a grade, you could say. If it would be a very negative grade, the hospital would call them back and ask them to postpone their visit to the hospital. Now, the moment supreme, Bot Framework Composer. This is what, for people who've been building chatbots with Microsoft, we were really waiting for. Virtual Agent was already something nice, but it's limited because it's really built for the business. Bot Framework Composer, well, that's the thing to go hands-on. What is it? Well, I personally call it SDK Plus. And why? Because you still need to code somehow a little bit, but it gives you a visual UI over the software development kit. It has tools for training your NLU, for adding QnA Maker, for doing language generation, for templating, and you can immediately install it and run it on your computer without having any extra services that is necessary, except the .NET Core. How does it look? Like this, but let's go into the code and see how it actually goes. Right, let me just get some things ready here.
Well, everything's ready. Is this merely focusing on developers? Is it also a power user tool?
You could say both. I'm sure there are certain things that a power user will not immediately know, but for sure you needed some training to get running with it. It's not as simple as a virtual agent. You will see in these examples why not.
Okay, great.
So once you've opened Bot Framework Composer, which is just an installer that you can download from the Bot Framework Kit, there's a Windows version, but there's also a web version. So the web version is more up to date, but has already some extra features. The Windows version that I've used now is more stable. So for demos, I prefer to use the most stable version. Now, once you click open it, you have an option to create new chatbots, where you create from scratch and you just get an empty template, or you create from template, and you have a bunch of examples that you can already use. For example, this Echo bot, I already created it. We'll just open it. So what we have here is a greeting. This part is just for activating when a user comes in, and then we send a welcome user message. You might already see, well, this is not just text, but this is actually linking to a function in the NL1, and where we're keeping track of all the messages that are sent. So here on the side, we have our designer part. So this is our designer side. We have our bot response. So what is the bot saying? We have our user input. So how do we understand what the user is actually telling the bot? Then we have QnA. I will go over that later. We have notifications of maybe there are some errors what you're building. Then of course we have publish. We have skills. I will also explain that later on. And then on the side, very important, settings, where you keep track of all your keys and endpoints, for example, from Lewis or from QnA Maker, and other settings of how your editor looks like. Now, let's go back. As I said, this part is for just taking in the first user, and then we send a welcome user. Let's go to this welcome user message, and then we can see what's in there. It's bot responses. And this welcome user is actually saying, welcome to the Echo bot sample. Now, once that is finished, and you say something, it goes through a system of recognizing what is said. But in this case, I added a trigger. So you can add different dialogues, and in this case I said I add a new trigger on the Echo bot once it's there, and I said unknown intent. When I don't know what is going on, then he just needs to tell me, okay, this is what I said. So when I restart the bot, we have another tool which is called the Bot Framework Emulator. And this is this. It looks a bit like Visual Code. It's just loading now. Okay, so if I restart the conversation here, it's not fully up and running. Okay, so we have the message, welcome to the Echo bot sample, and now whatever I say, the bot will say also. Simple chatbot, in and out, whatever you're saying. So let's make it a bit harder. We're going to create a new bot from scratch, and we're going to call it the Azure Live Weather Bot. Can give it a description, but we'll just keep it like that. Now we have our greeting here, exactly the same. Well, we can add our text here. So what we could say, hello, I am Alfred, the chatbot. Welcome. And that's it. If I start my chatbot, I'll let it run in the meanwhile. Now, in this case, I want to explain you a little bit about language generation. Sometimes I find that name not really correct because it doesn't really generate text, but it goes through some functions of which value it should show. So if we restart the conversation here, right, I'll just need to close this one, open an emulator. Right. Yeah, so hello, I'm Alfred, the chatbot, welcome. And whenever I'm sending this message, it will always stay the same. Now with language generation, I could say hello, this, but I could add a second line to it. Good evening, I am Alfred, what can I do for you? Now what will happen? It will pick any of these two sentences to be shown as this one. So that way your chatbot is not always responding with the same thing. Now, what else you could do is adding functions in it and checking values. Maybe the username has been given in, or good, instead of, depending on the time, you will say good evening or good morning and so on. Use the name from the user, as I said before. Now, what we want to do today, a small chatbot that will give us some information about the weather. Let me just get some values here. Okay. So I'll just copy this. So here we have three different responses that we are giving the user. Now we can also rename this if we want. We just say welcome user. Okay. Now what we want to do is, as the message here says, I'm a weather bot, say weather to get the current condition. Now what we add is we add a new trigger. And in the trigger we need to say, well, depending on what we want to do. Wait, I forgot something. If you click here on the main dialog, you have a recognizer type. And you can choose here between default recognizer, regular expression, or custom recognizer. Now, default recognizer means you're using Lewis. And yeah, of course, regular expression, it's named as what it is. It will use regex to know what is going on. We will start with using regex to see to figure out how it works, and then we can still switch to Lewis. Now regex, okay. So once here I add a new trigger, intent recognized. Okay, we'll call it weather. Please input regex pattern, which is actually also weather. So the moment we type weather, it will go to that, it will fire that trigger and start the dialog. Okay. So now we've added this trigger, and we can also now create another dialog. What we could do everything in here within this trigger, but we're not going to do that. Why? Because if we create a separate dialog, is what we're not now going to do, get weather, we can reuse this dialog for other purposes also. Because now this trigger is only going to work once you're within this dialog. So keep in mind of that. Now, let's go to get weather, and here we just want to say we'll start off with sending a response, getting the weather of today. All right, and if we go back to our trigger, here we can say, once this element is triggered, begin a new dialog, and this is the dialog you want to run as get weather. Now, if we restart our bot, right. Yeah, so if I would say nothing, well, nothing will happen. If I say weather, getting the weather of today, so it's triggered that dialog, and now you can go on within that task. Now let's work further in this dialog. We have our get weather. Now what we want to do is ask a question. Now we'll ask a question, and we want to get a text number because we want to ask for the zip code. So instead of just adding text here now, what is your zip code? We can also add other things. For example, that's an activity, and then you get more a box with some buttons that are added to it also. I will show you immediately once I've run run through the emulator how that looks like. Now in our user input, so we have our bot asks, we have our user input here. We will need to tell the composer where we want to save the value that is returned. In this case, we'll add it in the user.zip code. Now there's three different kinds of variables. You have on conversation level. So within the same conversation, you can save something. You have something on dialogue level, so this is within this one dialogue, or you have on user level. Now, if it's on user level and your user starts a new conversation 5 weeks later, for example, it will still remember those items because all these details will be saved in the bot state, and that could be, for example, a Cosmos DB. Now, what we would like to do here also is, for example, trim, so there's no spaces around the text in case the user did that. And then we have other, and in other we can add that we didn't get it, what the user was saying. And here we can use this value, this spent value, and this is what is actually asked for without being used yet. We can add some validation, for example, the length of this spent value needs to be equal to 5, so minimum 5 characters. And then if it's an invalid prompt, where's my mouse? We could also add something like this.
This user state, you said it could be stored in Cosmos DB. Do you have to configure anything for it, or is it just adding it to your bot framework?
Of course, you need to create a Cosmos DB on your Azure environment, and within your settings, your bot settings, you can configure here your Cosmos DB, so your bot state collection, so your auth key, your endpoint, and so on. If you don't do it, it will be saved on the memory of your app service. But if you have a lot of users, well, that's not a good idea. And the moment you switch off or restart, everything might be deleted. So please don't do that for production chatbot. It's good for development. Okay. Now, what is the next step? Well, we want to use this data that we received, this user.zip code. I lost my mouse. Okay, here it is. And we want to send it to an HTTP, to a REST client. Now, again, we click here on the plus, and we ask for access external resources. You see a nice couple of different things here. We have OAuth login. So if you want to be sure you're talking to the correct person, maybe you want to send him or show him specific details that no one else can see. You can connect to a skill. In the meanwhile, I'll explain you what a skill is. Now with Bot Framework SDK, you can build bot framework skills, and bot framework skills are actually chatbots with one specific or two specific functionalities that you can reuse in other chatbots. So you can build a skill that has something very particular and reuse it in, for example, in this bot framework composer, but even in Power Virtual Agent, you can connect to these skills. So if there's something that is not possible within Power Virtual Agent, you can build it in a skill and then still use it as an extra service in your virtual agent. Now, today we want to call an HTTP request, and it's actually just a GET request. I'm just going to copy the URL here. I'm sending just to an to a weather API, and where I'm using this end user zip code as one of the parameters. Now, where do I want to save the response of that request. This can be saved on dialog level because it does need to be on user level, for example, and we call it API response. And the response type, it's a JSON. So it could as well be binary data with a file. Now, the first thing we want to check after doing a request to an HTTP is, of course, checking if it's actually a valid response status code. And for that, we have conditions. We have if else, but also switch. Now, in this case, we'll just use if else. And our statement that we will call is checking the status code. Now we have our dialog.api.response, and there we also have our .status code, and that needs to be equal to 200 to have a valid response. Now, the whole value now we want to add into a local property. So we have manage properties and we set a property. And in this case, we will say dialog.weather is equal to the dialog.api response.content. Now we don't need to call this anymore, and we can just call this. Now, what we do, okay. Now we want to return to the user what the weather is, and we could say weather for. Now we use this curly. Can't come up with the name.
Braces.
Now. Curly braces correctly. Again, I will say dialog. Right. Dot weather dot city is dialog weather dot weather, because that's actually what we get back. Or we can go. And that's it. We could as well add another value here. If when we don't know, we send a response and give the error back of the API, content.message. But then we need to reset, because when we get this, depending on what your API is doing, in this example, it's sending in zip code and gets the weather back, but we might get an error when the zip code is incorrect or can't be found. So what we want to do here is manage our properties and delete a property. And here we will say user.zipcode. Well, we want to remove it. So why am I telling this? Well, there's this, remember I told you there's three different properties. You have users, you have on user level, you have on dialect level, and you have on conversation level. Now, if we fill in the zip code and it's an incorrect one, and we wouldn't delete it, the next time it wouldn't ask this question again. Why not? Because on the other part, on the bottom, we have this part always prompt. And at this now it's false, which means that once it's already filled in, like for example, if you've asked for your name, it will not re-ask you that question. Now, let's show how that works. Right. Okay. So I started a conversation. This is an option within Bot Framework Emulator to start a conversation with a new user or to start it with the same user ID. So we'll keep now with the new user. I'll say weather. It'll ask me what's your zip code. I said 90,001. Weather for null is null, and that's something I did wrong. What did I forget? That's what you have with live demos, eh? See what I did wrong. So you need to say equal to. Okay. Okay. So we want to know the weather for zip code 90,001. And again, weather for Los Angeles is haze. Let's restart this conversation with the same user ID. What's the weather? Weather for Los Angeles is haze. It didn't ask me anymore because it knew what it was. And that's only done by just simply making sure that this value is on false. Now, another feature that you see here is allow interruptions, and which is also very handy. Why? Well, you might have a question that is hard and your users maybe don't fully understand what is being said. What can you do? We go back to our main bot and we will add another trigger. And in here we will say help. And the same thing, the moment they say help, well, you can go. And in this case, we'll also add another dialog, get help, and we will just send a response. This chatbot can help you with getting the weather online. Just say weather. Okay. Same thing, we have our trigger and we need to call our dialog. So dialog management, we get a new dialog, get weather. No. If you go back to our get weather, at this moment, allow interruptions as false. So let's see what that does. Right. Okay. So weather, I'll just start as a new user, so it asks me the question. Weather. What's your zip code? And now I say help. And it can't find help because help is not a valid zip code. So the API throw me an error. Now, if I allow interruptions, okay, new user. Weather. And now I say help. Did I forget something? It should be saying this value now. Let me just try again. Weather. Can also, this is also what I want to show with those activity cards. So we have here the button help. So this is not within the chatbot, will always be on the bottom of with your input box. Okay, I will need to figure out what is going on, why it's not showing now. Whatever, not so important now. Another option if we go back to get weather, because we want to make things a bit more visual, we have adaptive cards. Part of this is, for example, also thumbnail cards. And then you could, instead of adding send a response, just text, you could add something like this. Now, this is giving the title of the card, what text is within, and also adding some pictures. I restart the bot now. In the meanwhile, I'll also load this. Okay. And now we have a nice card, how things are laid out. This can be fully styled to many different things. Within the templates, there's one example where they show everything that is possible. You can even add videos, and it gives images, as we've seen already here, links to YouTube and so on. Let's go. Okay, live chat. Now, to show you what else is possible within that, so one of the projects we did is together with It's Me. It's Me is an identity controller that checks actually if who you really are, but linked to your identity card. It's something that is on the Belgian market and also in Holland now. What we did for them was an example chatbot where you could, the case I said already, book a flight. And so what can I do for you? I want to book a flight to JFK. And this is also something totally different. Instead of just showing a text with different options, here we can scroll through different items. And it will show me different airports with almost the same code. And so we have here JFK. Now it's asking where are you leaving from? I'll say Belgium. We have a couple of airports. I couldn't find them because we're not looking in this case on country level, but purely on the airport name. So we'll say Brussels. I will have two different now. So I will choose Charleroi. And when would you like to depart? Also here, this is different. It could just be text that you say, I want to leave tomorrow. It will recognize that and link it to correct item. But in this case, it's just a date picker where you can choose, confirm your date, and go on. When would you like to return? First, economy. I don't have any allergies. And here we did an integration with It's Me purely for authentication. Okay, back. Okay, so we've had some different things already. Time is ticking, so I will go on. We used regex now. I want to switch over now to Lewis and see how things are there. Now, to change back to Lewis, we will change our recognizer type and we'll add it to default recognizer. Just to cheat on my example here. For example, for weather, we will have now trigger phrases. And we could say get weather. When something like get weather is set, well then go to that item. Or just weather. Or how is the weather? What is the weather in? Now, you would say there's something extra needed here, indeed, because we're saying what is the weather in, but we would like to give the possibility that the user asks the question and already say from which place he wants the weather. So to do that, we need to again use those curly bracelets. I'm not bracelet. Yeah, you understand
Braces.
braces. We call it zip code and give our example. So in this case, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need to add conditions also to it. Once you've sent something to Louis will score it and will give a number to it. And now in this case, we want to say this weather score needs to be bigger than 0.8. It's a percentage, so it's between 0 and 1. So if the score that is Louis sent back is bigger than 80%, well, then this is getting triggered. Otherwise, nothing has happened. We will do exactly the same for help. Okay, I will just replace this and we'll say help.score needs to be bigger than 0.5. Okay. Now, once we've added this for welcome, the zip code, it doesn't mean yet that we can use it. It will already send it to your dialog, but we need to add something here on top. And that's getting that data and setting a property. So again, we have manage our properties, set a property. And here we say we want to set our user.zip code with the values. And this might look a bit weird because we're doing a coalesce of different items. And the first one is the zip code. We do also $sign zip code, and this will already work. But if our zip code was pre-filled already before and we saved it, then it will still ask it because you're resetting here your zip code. So we could add also here user.zip code, and this way, if it's already saved in your memory or in your data, in your context, it will use it again if none of the values here are filled in. And that's it. Now restart the bot. Ask you, okay, but where can I save my Louis? I'm going to cheat for a second what my key is. Where did I open my browser? Seconds. Right. Oh, I can show you also in Louis how it looks. So if you open Louis, you will go to this site, eu.louis.ai, or if you're using the US site, it's just louis.ai. And you have here on the site, after you create it in your Azure portal, we go to my resource and cognitive service. It's a classic cognitive service. You will find it in louis.ai. And then we can click here on manage authoring resources, and we need this primary key. This one. And remember, I've built mine in West Europe, that we reuse this. Okay. So we need to change it to West Europe, and we just say okay. So what we've used here in our text on the site here, this is training data for your Louis. This is also training your Louis model. You can still do that in the portal, but you can also just do it here. But once you've done it here, there's no way, well, you can still edit it in Louis, but it will not come back to the Bot Framework Composer, because the moment you click Restart Bot, it will overwrite what is in Louis. So don't forget that. So if we look now to Louis, my Louis, we see here the version I made. You will see the different intents. We have our help intent with the different examples. And we have our weather intent with different examples, and also linked that this is a zip code. So zip code is linked to an entity, and here we also find zip code, and it's a machine learned entity. So you can also link it to, for example, a list of items or a pre-built domain, like for example, recognizing a date. All right. Now I think I already built it. Now, what is the weather? Ah, sorry, forgot about that. So we've configured it to deploy everything, but not to use it yet. So if we go to the settings here on the side, you can add the other items to your Lewis. Now what I need here, let's quickly cheat. Where are you, Lewis? So we have an authoring service, and we need, where is it now? Should be showing me something else here also. I should see also a prediction endpoint. I will just copy from what I have to show you how it works. Normally it should show up here. Right. Start bot. Hope this will not fail now. After this, there's one more thing I would like to show, and that's the compatibility with QnA Maker. All right. Restart. So, what is the weather? What's your zip code? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it still works. Okay. Now, if I say what is the weather in 90,001, it will not ask me anymore what's the zip code, but will immediately give the correct item. Okay, QnA Maker. As I already explained, QnA Maker is an awesome service for simple question and answer items, but of course we want to have that in our Bot Framework Composer also. If we go to our designer on the side, we click on our bot, we can add a new trigger, and here we will say not intent recognized, but for example unknown intent. So if Lewis doesn't know what it is, well then let's see if we can find something in QnA Maker. We say submit, and again we want to call another dialog. We'll add a new dialog, call QnA. And here we have the option access external resources, and we want to connect to QnA knowledge base. And that's it. That's the only thing we need to do. Just now in the trigger, we need to also call this dialog. And here we call it call QnA. I'm going to copy my QnA settings that I already made. Again, don't forget to change this in your settings. And I restart the bot. If you want to see how QnA looks like, in the meanwhile, I need to refresh this page. So QnAmaker.ai, you can create a service from here on. You can also do it immediately on in the portal itself. Okay. So I have two questions: who is Sammy and what is Azure Community Live? Where you can add alternative phrases and your answer and so on. In the meanwhile, the bot should be restarted. Now we're not going to say whether, but we're going to ask who is Sammy. And it didn't see it was not whether, that it wasn't help, and so it sent the question, all the full text, to QnA Maker and gave me the answer. So what is Azure Live? And it also gave me the answer on that. And that's not exactly the question that I had in the system. There it was, what is Azure what is Azure Community Live? What is coming up with QnA Maker is that, as you've seen here on the side, we have QnA, is that you will be able to manage your QnA within Bot Framework Composer, which is really cool. It's already possible. I still had a little bug and I couldn't get it working for this demo, but they're still working on it to get better integration with these services. Also a combination of Lewis and QnA Maker. Now, Lewis gets a scoring and QnA Maker also gives scorings back on depending on what the user is saying. But it might be that the Lewis gives a score that is very high, but that the QnA service is also giving a score that is very high. And then it's which one is the correct one. Because in this case, we give always QnA Maker priority by also setting up that the score needs to be at least here 80% that we get back. But there's something coming up where by combining those two to get a better scoring and on the combination of those two. Of course, at the end, once you've done everything you want to publish, you need to create a publish profile, depending on what you want to do on a web app or an Azure function. You need to configure just all your different endpoints and connection strings. Click Save, click Publish, and it's up and running. Now, we're reaching the end of the, well, we're already at 8, I'm sorry. Bot Framework Composer, it's an awesome tool. We use it on production level at our customers these days. There's a lot of new things still coming, purely on Bot Framework itself of Microsoft. They're investing a lot of money in it, on also putting the user experience of all of this to make it better, to make it more simple, to have better integrations between the 4 different flavors you have, the Bot Framework SDK, the Health Bots, the Power Virtual Agent, and of course Bot Framework Composer. And with this, I'm going to end my session. If you still have any questions, please use the chat on YouTube. You can also always reach me on Twitter, on my Twitter handle. I'm always listening there. So thank you very much for watching this session.
Well, thank you, Sammy. I still have some small questions. Like, do you use Bot Framework Composer now all the time?
I hear you.
Or do you still... You can't hear me?
No.
Hello? Did you mute me? Because
I still cannot hear you. Is my...
Because the stream can hear me. That's weird.
My sound is on. Oh. Geert?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, sorry, I think it was my side. My excuse.
Yeah, it was your side. I saw the equalizer going up when I was speaking. So,
okay.
First of all, because you didn't hear me at first, thank you very much for this talk. Really enjoyed it. Some questions. Do you use the Bot Framework Composer all the time, or do you still often just full-on code your bot?
It depends from use case to use case. like for example, handover to a real human. It's not something that is built in Composer yet, but it's a question we get regularly from our customers. So that we need to choose for Bot Framework SDK. If there are specific channels you need to talk to that again are not by default in the Microsoft environment, then also again you need to use Bot Framework SDK because you need to do specific tuning. But what you can do is you build something in Composer and actually is loaded in Visual Studio and edit it as a Bot Framework SDK. And still do some alterings in there.
So
but then
Bot Framework
back
Composer would be a starting point most of the times.
Yeah, but you can't go back anymore.
No, okay. So when you go to code path, then you're
then you're stuck there.
Okay.
Or
yeah,
if
makes
you
sense.
steal from it and use it then in your Bot Framework Composer or virtual agent.
Yeah, I would choose that maybe. So mainly for the flow, because I really like the visual tree diagram of your flow, because I've built bots in code and it's navigating through all the code of where is my dialogue going where. That's often complex when you've built a complex bot. So seeing these trees and the dialogues visually is something that's really valuable. And if you could have those areas as skills, like the handover, as you said, could you create a skill out of that? So you can use it in Composer?
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. But I'm sure handover and so on, it will be better integrated in the future with the bot framework. There are already some examples online, but again, it depends from what tools you're using to do the handover to. Is it the Teams or is it another chat application that you're using? Some of them has a lot of custom built.
Okay. Well, thanks again for this talk, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back tomorrow, so 2 streams in a row. Tomorrow we will talk about Azure Resource Graph. So that's also a very interesting talk. And for now, well, let's have a play with Azure Bot Framework Composer to see if we can build our bots that way. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for watching.